I broke up with my rich boyfriend. Victor froze on the other end of the line for 10 seconds before finally saying, I respect your choice. But, Joanne, please give me one last chance to take you out to dinner. I remained silent. My silence was because he had agreed so readily, just as I had feared and imagined throughout this past year. He said, tonight at 8 o'clock, at the Odin Western restaurant. I'll be waiting for you. At 8 in the evening, I arrived at Odin as promised. Victor, for the first time, wore the gray suit I had given him and held a large bouquet of red roses in his hands. I took the flowers with a sense of melancholy. Thank you. After we sat down, I couldn't take my eyes off him. He was truly handsome, tall, good-looking, and stylish. Even at this juncture, I had to admit, I was still captivated by him. Victor looked at me with an elegant smile and asked, well? Does the suit you bought for me look good on me? I said, it looks very nice. But I knew he actually didn't think much of this suit. I had given it to him over half a year ago, and he had never worn it once. Victor didn't wear it simply because he considered the suit cheap. Yet back then, to pick out a suitable suit for him, I had truly racked my brains, finally gritting my teeth and settling on this one priced at $28,000. $28,000 was the limit of what I could afford, but to Victor, it was just a piece of cheap clothing he wouldn't wear. Yet, I understood, this wasn't something to blame Victor for. I still remember the last time I went shopping with him, he didn't even blink before buying me a $200,000 bag. The two of us ate steak in silence. Victor put down his knife and fork, suddenly serious. Joanne, thank you, really thank you. I didn't dare look at him, afraid that if I did, I'd start crying. He continued, I'm so grateful you came into my life, Joanne. You're truly wonderful, exceptional, I really like you. I cut into my steak, listening quietly. Victor said, if you change your mind, I can pretend nothing ever happened. We can go back to how things were before, maintaining our relationship as a couple. He repeated, I really like you. I gathered the courage to meet his gaze. I said, Victor, the gap between us is too wide. Even if it's not today, it will be tomorrow or the day after. We'll eventually part ways. Victor covered my hand with his palm. That doesn't matter. What's important is that we cherish this relationship with all our hearts. Even if the outcome isn't ideal, we can still look back with a smile and say we have no regrets. You always say you like me, but do you love me? He looked at me intently and, as I wished, said, I love you. Then will you marry me? I said. Marry me tomorrow. He fell silent. Silently withdrew his hand. I let out a bitter laugh and raised my glass. Victor, let's drink to our year together. His eyes sparkled with emotion, the soft lighting of the Western restaurant casting him as tonight's most elegant leading man. Holding back the ache in my heart, I smiled at him, because I knew that after tonight, he would be someone else's leading man. Victor laughed, raised his hand, and clinked his glass with mine. It was the perfect ending to our brief year together. The next day, I took 3 days off from work. By the second day of lying at home, Cheryl busted my door open. She was shocked the moment she stepped inside. When she saw the beer cans scattered all over the floor, her expression turned even more horrified. Oh my God, what are you even doing? You dumped him, and now you're acting all brooding. I can't even with you. I shrugged, neither confirming nor denying. As she spoke, she started tidying up my living room. I went to the bathroom to freshen up. I really couldn't keep going like this. Cheryl muttered while tidying up, I really don't understand what's going through your mind, dumping such a perfect, high-quality boyfriend. What kind of man do you think you'll find in the future? No matter how much Cheryl nagged, I remained unmoved. Being with Victor had truly made me happy. With him, I never had to think about where to go or what to do, he always arranged everything flawlessly. Switzerland, Norway, Finland, the Maldives, or accompanying him to auctions, watching him bid hundreds of thousands, even millions, on artworks worth less than a quarter of their price. To make my commute easier, he even bought a luxurious apartment near my rental place. The night I moved in, I truly felt like Snow White from a fairy tale, as though I'd found my prince. The night we broke up, he wanted to give me this apartment. I refused. In this relationship, he had given a lot, though in his eyes, it might have been insignificant. Thanks to Victor, at the age of 25, I came into contact with things that didn't belong to my social class. But it also threw me off balance for a long time. As I opened the wardrobe to pick out clothes, Cheryl had already mentioned my family background, saying that with no parents in this city and being all alone, I should stay with a man like Victor instead of letting go so easily. My gaze lingered on the 200,000 yuan bag hanging on the wardrobe door. What Cheryl didn't know was that Victor was like this exquisite bag to me. Perhaps carrying it could make me appear glamorous, but deep down, I knew I never truly possessed it, not for a single moment. Within just one short year, this sense of unworthiness had exhausted me, both mentally and physically. After Cheryl and I restored the room to its tidy state, we went out for a meal together. During dinner, she said, "You wouldn't believe it, people are already saying Victor dumped you." I kept my head down as I ate, picking at my food. "Oh, so the news is already out?" I thought it'd take a while longer. Cheryl asked, "Did you know Evan booked out the entire Golden City villa last night?" I shook my head. Evan's family is the only one in Y City that can rival Victor's, and Evan, the crown prince of the Williams family, grew up with Victor. Their bond runs deep. Cheryl looked at me with an expression of exasperation. "It's all over the news. Apparently, it's a soiree to celebrate your ex-boyfriend Victor's new relationship." Despite the discomfort in my heart, I maintained a nonchalant expression. "Seems perfectly normal. He's rich and can do whatever he wants." Cheryl tapped the back of my hand with her chopsticks as I reached for food. "I can't believe you. Doesn't it feel like a waste? He's Victor, the man every woman in Y City dreams of marrying." I looked at her. "Do you really think I have the ability and luck to cross class barriers and become a daughter-in-law your family would acknowledge?" Cheryl's eyes quickly dimmed. How could she not know? She was just like all the onlookers, thinking I would use every trick in the book to cling to Victor, then do whatever it takes to get what I want, whether fame or fortune. What she didn't consider was that when the class gap is too obvious, it inevitably means my relationship with Victor could never be one of equals. I rarely reached out to him proactively because I knew he was busy with work, and that his social engagements required a lot of his time. Tagging along to his social circles, his friends always cast strange glances at me. It's not about looking down on people, but rather an indifferent casualness. They never seemed curious about what I did for a living, as if it was taken for granted that I was just a pretty vase next to Victor. Victor is perfect. Throughout the year of our relationship, he's never ordered me around, yet I always find myself unconsciously yielding to him, even when he casually mentions the smallest things. My friends always envy me, saying my boyfriend is handsome, wealthy, and incredibly attentive. But only I know how inferior I feel in this relationship. Because deep down, I understand, he will always hold the reins, with the power to say over to me at any moment. As we stepped out of the restaurant, Cheryl sincerely patted me on the shoulder and said, "To be honest, I admire you. Your clarity makes me want to kneel and kowtow to you." I said, "Then let's kowtow." Cheryl smiled and came over to pinch me. After the relationship ended, I pulled myself together and threw myself into work wholeheartedly. During this time, due to working overtime, I moved again, from one not-so-spacious rented apartment to another equally unspacious one. On the day I moved in, Cheryl came to visit with her boyfriend Terry. I cooked a full table of dishes, and the three of us chatted late into the night. After finishing up in the dining area and kitchen, I leaned against the window and gazed at the neon lights below. It was easy to think of Victor again. For the past 6 months, Victor hadn't reached out to me once. And I hadn't either. I look around, utterly exhausted, and throw myself onto the couch. I think of Victor's spacious loft, remember how he kissed me with his eyes closed, so deeply affectionate. And that sunny morning, he stood by the floor-to-ceiling window bare-chested. I woke up in bed, and before I could call out to him, he suddenly said, "You know, Joanne, it's so good to have you. I can't tell anyone that I'm still not over it." The paradox is, I also refuse to be just an appendage to the wealthy. In the silent night, I whispered to the empty house, "Cinderella, this is the world that belongs to you. Cinderella, face the reality. I know it's a painful withdrawal process, but I can't turn back. I know what I want. I want equality, I want not to be looked down upon, I want genuine respect." I jumped ship to Bona Media. 3 years later, I successfully established myself. During this time, I heard that Victor had a girlfriend. Not long after, I heard they broke up. Then came the news that Victor was going abroad. The night before he left, he sent me a photo of me from 3 years ago. I opened the photo, zoomed in with my finger, and scrutinized my younger self. The person in the picture was smiling gently and sweetly, yet it felt somewhat unfamiliar to me. In the photo, Victor's hand was resting on top of my head, the only part of him visible in this shot. I tried hard to recall when this picture was taken, but my memory failed me. Just as I was about to reply to the message, my phone rang, a call from my boss, Yolanda. It was a busy night. I had to draft 3 proposals while battling with the execution team, all while preparing a plan B. Yolanda called precisely to push for progress. By the time everything was finished, it was already 3 a.m. At 7 in the morning, I was at the office on time. The work was perfectly wrapped up, and Yolanda was pleased, giving us half a day off. I picked up my phone and only then saw the message Victor had sent. Along with the one I had intended to reply to last night but forgot. Last night's message, "Joanne, my flight is at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow. Can you come see me off?" Today's message, "I'm leaving, take good care of yourself." I checked the time, it was already 10:50. I stood frozen for a full minute. For some unknown reason, I grabbed my bag from the table and rushed out. But it was still too late. After returning home, I told Cheryl about this little episode. Cheryl asked, "If you had replied to the message then, if you had seen him, what would you have done?" I smiled, "I just wanted to see him off, nothing more." Cheryl said, "Since that's the case, you might as well not go. Actually, the longer time passes, the more I realize how correct your decision was back then. These past 2 years, he hasn't had a single idle moment, there's been no shortage of admirers around him." I chuckled without responding and changed the subject, "I've got half a day off. Want to go out for a walk?" "Sure, it's rare for you to have time off." "Let's go, anywhere's fine." As soon as Yolanda walked in, she tossed a document next to Monica's hand and said, "Monica, good news, I've got you a great gig." The good job she mentioned was unanimously classified by us as a tough nut to crack. Monica casually flipped through the file, and Evan's handsome face caught my eye. Yolanda took off her coat, revealing her enviable figure to everyone. The Williams heir, Evan, setting aside his family background, just that domineering name alone could fill a 2,000-word report. Monica joined the company in the same batch as me, with strong professional skills. Her life motto is to dare to challenge oneself and be a pioneer. Monica made an okay gesture and said confidently, "I'll take this case." However, Evan was a difficult person to deal with, and Monica blew the interview. Evan called Yolanda directly and said, "Your company's level of professionalism has truly impressed me. I'm now considering whether to continue working with your firm." Yolanda glanced at Monica's distressed face and, while walking toward her office, replied, "Evan, I was just about to call you to explain." Yolanda assigned the task to me. The next day, I met Evan. When Dylan and I entered the room, he was sitting in the boss chair, facing the floor-to-ceiling window while talking on the phone with someone. "There's no place like home, especially overseas. Just remember one thing, come back soon. I'll open a 1990 Romani Conti to celebrate your return." The chair spun around, Evan's handsome smile freezing on his face. After a few seconds of stunned silence, he said to the person on the phone, "Hey dude, guess who I just saw?" It's unclear what was said on the other end. Evan laughed and said, "Your dream girl, my ex-sister-in-law." My heart raced, I knew exactly who he was talking to. Evan said, "Gotta go, talk later." Evan hung up and looked at us, asking, "Who are you looking for?" "We're from Bonner." Dylan replied, "This is Joanne, our planning department director." Evan sneered, "Then don't waste time. Let's get started." "How do you want me to cooperate?" Dylan was about to speak when I interrupted, "Please stand up from your chair first." Dylan and the others froze, looking at me in surprise. Others might not know Evan well, but I understand him too clearly. The reason Monica screwed up the interview was 99% because of this playboy. Evan and I locked eyes for over 10 seconds before he finally stood up under my unwavering gaze. Ex-sister-in-law, was it really necessary to assert dominance the moment we met? Just a second ago he was like an iceberg, but now he started grinning with an air of playful irreverence. This abrupt shift left Dylan and the others utterly stunned. The filming and the interview went smoothly. However, after the shoot, Evan's assistant brought over a phone, and we exchanged contact info. That's how I finally got connected with him on social media. His profile picture was of a dog, and his username read, "I am the best in the world." In my 5th year at Bona, I finally secured the position of department manager. As I'd wished, I also bought my first apartment, 150 square meters, not too big or small, but extraordinarily meaningful to me. Cheryl and Terry got married this year because of an unplanned pregnancy, while I, all these years, have been too busy moving forward, always alone. I've made efforts in this regard too, and met a few decent members of the opposite sex, but I always felt something was missing. Cheryl threw a pillow at me, "Girl, you're 30. It's not appropriate to still be as picky as you were at 25. I peeled an orange for her, carefully removing the white pith, a privilege reserved for a little mom-to-be. It's not about being picky, just that something always seems lacking. Spell it out, what exactly is missing? Cheryl got serious. That Ryan, tall, handsome and accomplished, wealthy and good-looking, he was smitten with you at first sight. Tell me, what exactly was your issue with him? I said, he's 1.88 meters tall, and I'm only 1.62 meters, that's a huge height difference. Cheryl suppressed her anger and continued, then what about Terry's childhood friend? Comes from a scholarly family, well off, 1.78 meters tall, what's wrong with that? I kept peeling an orange for her and said, he's highly cultured, and I'm too uncouth, I'm not good enough for him. Cheryl reached out and pinched my arm, making me yelp in pain. Ow. Pregnant women shouldn't hit people, it affects the baby's IQ. Cheryl was both amused and exasperated, what kind of twisted logic is that? I handed her a peeled orange, and she sighed, why don't you just say they aren't Victor? I said, it's not that serious. Cheryl said, it's very serious. Terry followed his wife's lead, totally extreme. I was speechless. My phone rang, and when I picked it up, the message from read, tonight at 8 p.m., Golden City Villa. No show and we'll put out a warrant for you. Cheryl leaned over for a glance and sneered, what idiot named themselves that? I said, Evan, the young master. Cheryl immediately changed her tone, in that case, this name is absolutely awe-inspiring. I gave her a complicated look. I quickly sent a reply, no, thank you. Cheryl said regretfully, ordinary people rack their brains trying to get into Evan's gatherings and can't even manage it, and you just turned it down like that? I said, who knows if he's trying to mess with me. Last time, to get him to cooperate with the interview, I didn't hold back in showing him my displeasure. I couldn't be bothered to argue with that couple. Thankfully, Evan knew better, he realized I wouldn't go and didn't press further. But 40 minutes later, his call came through. I picked up. His voice declared, put on the most stunning outfit of your life and come downstairs. My car's waiting for you below. I strolled to the floor-to-ceiling window and, sure enough, spotted his outrageously flashy orange Apollo EVO parked outside the company building. Cheryl, her pregnant belly leading the way, couldn't resist adding, now that's a man with guts. I went anyway. No way around it, working in City Y, I had to give Evan some face. I pulled open the car door and slid into the passenger seat. Getting me to personally pick you up, in all of City Y, besides my mom, you're the only one. Evan started the car irritably. Am I right, ex-sister-in-law? The roar of the sports car erupted, deafeningly loud. Evan whistled, and the car shot into the night like an arrow. By the time we got out, I was practically pale, clutching a trash can as dry heaves racked me. Evan looked at me with satisfaction. Yo, ex-sister-in-law doesn't seem too well. I suppressed the churning discomfort in my stomach with all my might and demanded, what exactly do you want? You'll find out soon enough. He handed me a few tissues, then had someone bring me a cup of tea to rinse my mouth, saying, just wait and see. I followed him into the hall. He didn't pay me any mind, casually greeting others on his own. I quietly found a corner to sit in, unable to guess what he truly intended, my instincts telling me nothing good. But since I was here, I might as well settle in. Looking at the glamorous men and women before me, my nervousness quickly eased. Evan mingled with guests, clinking glasses, while his sidelong glances toward me made it seem like he feared I might bolt at any moment. The hall lights suddenly dimmed, and as if familiar with this routine, the crowd gravitated toward the center. Evan took the microphone from his assistant and calmly stepped into the spotlight. After clearing his throat twice, he announced, today, I am very happy, because my best friend has returned to the country. My heart began to race. In my mind, his best friend could only be Victor. The ornate European-style carved doors of the hall swung open, and Victor walked in gracefully under everyone's gaze. The hall was so silent you could hear a pin drop. The only sound was the rhythmic click of Victor's leather shoes against the marble floor. The lighting changed once more. This time, the spotlight fell directly upon me. Every gaze in the room froze upon my figure, including Victor walking slowly towards me. What left me dazed was that Victor was wearing the same gray suit I had bought for him back in the day. Not far away, Evan's voice rang out, Victor, welcome back to the country. Thunderous applause erupted all around. Victor's slender figure stopped in front of me. He extended those familiar hands toward me, calling my name as gently as ever, Joanne. He smiled and said, long time no see. I hadn't intended to offer my hand. But the hall filled with the sound of string music. The lights shifted unpredictably, and in that moment, the atmosphere became enveloped in ambiguity. Everyone took their partner's hands and glided onto the dance floor. The instant our fingertips touched, I instinctively pulled back. But Victor didn't give me a chance to retreat. He seized my hand and held it firmly in his. At that moment, it seemed as if the entire world had narrowed down to just the two of us. He led my steps into the dance floor, where silhouettes and lights intertwined. I lifted my gaze and suddenly felt Victor's presence wasn't quite real. A brilliant smile curled at Victor's lips as his gentle voice sounded by my ear, Joanne, you haven't changed a bit all these years. The car stopped at the entrance of my apartment complex. When I tried to open the door, I found it already locked. I looked at him and laughed. You're not about to pull some cheesy soap opera stunt like flying back to chase after a long-lost love, are you? He didn't expect me to say that and was taken aback for a moment. After all, the version of me at the gala just now was completely different from the slightly sharper one standing before him now. To be honest, the moment I saw Victor, I was genuinely dazed. It felt utterly unreal, as if I'd suddenly time-traveled from my 30s back to my 25-year-old self. Or perhaps it was like waking from a dream. Now that the dream was over, Victor was facing the 30-year-old Joanne. He quickly composed himself, his expression steadier and more professional than the mask I wore at that moment. Joanne, I have to be honest with you. I came back to China, for you. I looked at him and said sincerely, but I'm not the Joanne I used to be. I know, but I'm still me. Victor clearly didn't understand that it was precisely the Victor from back then that I wanted to leave. This also destined that there would no longer be any relationship between us. He thought what I still longed for was the dazzling 25-year-old version of him. It's natural for him to think this way, who wouldn't love a young man in his prime, full of promise? Just like when he said at the gathering, Joanne, after all these years, you haven't changed at all. What he wanted to find was still the Joanne from back then. In other words, what he loved and longed for was always the 25-year-old Joanne. But from the moment I heartlessly broke up with him, I had already killed that version of Joanne. Over all these years, not even a trace of her remains. Nice to see you again, I said, but this isn't the time for nostalgia. I gestured with my eyes for him to open the door. Victor smiled lightly, and the car door clicked as it unlocked. I pushed the door open and stepped out. By the time I got home, I felt as though my soul had been drained from me. Cheryl was right, the reason I couldn't accept other men was simply because they weren't Victor. Just that brief encounter had already drained me of all my strength. I covered my face with my hands, trying to stop myself from thinking about that face. But I couldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next day, I covered the dark circles under my eyes with heavy makeup and walked into the office looking glamorous. To everyone else, I was still the poised, aloof, flawless Joanne. Dylan handed me a document and said, "Joanne, here's the report you requested. As per your instructions, I compiled a list of the most promising potential stars in Y-City's up-and-coming rankings." I took the document and retreated to my private office. Dylan brewed me a cup of coffee. I accepted it with a word of thanks and absent-mindedly flipped open the file. My gaze lingered on the man on the cover who was impossible to look away from. Unlike before, Victor now appeared composed and introverted, with extraordinary qualities and appearance. Undoubtedly, he was an exceptional individual. Seeing that I hadn't turned the page for a while, Dylan introduced, "Joanne, this is the newly appointed heir of the Garcia Group, Victor. He's been managing the family's overseas business abroad for the past few years and only recently returned to the country." Dylan studied my expression before continuing with his thoughts. "He's the leading actor for this season." I sipped my coffee slowly and placed the document on the desk. "You're very ambitious." I glanced at Dylan. "Do you remember that blockbuster report from 2 years ago?" Dylan answered without hesitation, "Of course I remember. Evan, the heir of the Williams Group, made headlines and stayed trending for a full month. That was all thanks to you." I raised my hand, signaling him to skip the pleasantries. Since Yolanda was transferred to the branch company to take over as vice president, I'd been in charge of all the planning, operations, and the team here. But even so, I still wouldn't dare underestimate Yolanda back then. After all, even now, I couldn't confidently say I could have landed Evan. That was Yolanda's credit. I had no interest in taking full credit for past achievements. I asked him, "How many years have you been with the company?" Dylan replied, "The 3rd year." I smiled and closed the document. "You have good judgment and sharp instincts, but convincing Victor might be a bit challenging." I handed the file back to him. "Since you proposed this case, it's only right to leave it to you. Do you feel confident?" Dylan was overjoyed. After taking the documents, he said, "I have a friend who was Victor's classmate, and we've kept in touch these years. I can ask my friend to act as a liaison, there shouldn't be any issues." I nodded. "Great, go ahead with your work. I'll be waiting for your good news." After Dylan left, I immediately threw myself into busy work, doing everything I could to keep my mind occupied. At 10 p.m., I finished 2 creative drafts, stretched, packed up, and headed home. Downstairs, in the parking lot. Just as I was about to get into my car, headlights flashed not far away, followed by the sound of a horn. Victor pushed open the car door and stepped out. "Joanne, do you have time for a late-night snack?" I actually knew what time it was, but I still pretended to glance at my wristwatch. "Is this your usual time for a late-night snack?" Victor's smile widened. "I've been waiting here for 2 hours, Joanne. You're even busier than I imagined." I had no intention of small-talking about work with him and went straight to the point. "Where to?" Victor waved the car keys in his hand and said, "Come with me, you'll find out soon." At this hour, a man and a woman alone, arranging a late-night snack, was undoubtedly an adventure between 2 adults. I looked at him calmly. "Perhaps afraid I might refuse," he retorted. "What? Are you scared?" I stuffed the car keys back into my bag, walked straight to his car, and he opened the door for me like a gentleman as I got in. After starting the car, he asked, "Do you remember how we first met?" I smiled and said, "I wish I could forget." At the age of 24, just entering the workforce, I had to attend a work dinner with the project manager and was forced to drink quite a bit. While standing alone on the street trying to hail a taxi, I accidentally got into Victor's car. Looking back now, I find it utterly ridiculous. Who in the world would use a Ferrari as a taxi? Honestly, I thought you were doing it on purpose at the time. After all, plenty of girls usually try to hit on me. Victor's car drove smoothly. But the moment you got in, you passed out completely. I had no choice but to take you to the police station. When Cheryl picked me up from the police station, she gave Victor a deep look. Later, Cheryl told me, "I never expected him to take you to the police station. Honestly, I would have understood better if he'd just dumped you in some filthy ditch." I said, "Thank you so much, kind sir. Thanks to you, I made the news the very next day. Thanks to you, many girls later tried to imitate you, but unfortunately, none of them ever succeeded again." Victor turned the steering wheel in a full circle. "Over the past 2 years abroad, I've been busy with company matters, and that Evan kid kept bothering me with news about you." I watched the rows of plane trees flash by outside the window and replied absent-mindedly, "Really?" She said, "You've completely transformed, like a different person from before." He said, "Your gaze is so sharp it could kill someone." I said, "Please tell Evan thanks for the compliment." Victor fell silent. He parked the car in front of Wujia Bar but made no move to get out. "Joanne." I looked at him, waiting for him to speak. He parted his lips but lacked the courage to continue. In the end, he just leaned over and unbuckled my seatbelt for me, just like he used to. 2 cocktails later, we barely spoke a word between us. What Victor did most was glance at my profile, then let his eyes wander to my bare fingers. It wasn't until he dropped me off at my apartment that I realized I might have been tricked. The car wasn't coming back, and tomorrow I'd have to squeeze onto the subway for work. He smiled and said, "I'll pick you up tomorrow morning." I replied, "No need, I'll take the subway to the office." He continued, "Your work starts at 9, but you usually arrive at the office by 8:30. Based on your past routine, you'll probably wake up around 6 in the morning. I'll wait for you here at 6:30 tomorrow morning." I looked at him and said, as expected of Victor, "You've figured it all out so quickly." It's Evan's credit, I dare not claim his merits for myself. Frankly, no one would believe me if I said that 2 of Y-City's most prominent CEOs would go to such lengths for an ordinary woman like me. My tone was dripping with sarcasm. Unexpectedly, Victor replied, "Because you're worth it." Before I could say anything more, he drove off with a casual air. The next day, I deliberately got up early and left before 6 a.m., only to find Victor leaning against the car door, waiting for me. He pulled open the passenger door, his smug expression speaking volumes. With no choice, I obediently got in. After sitting down, he handed me the breakfast bag. I opened it and saw plain porridge with small side dishes. I said, "Victor, you seem to have a lot of free time?" "Not bad, just handling the handover matters for various companies." "Busy but orderly, quite fulfilling." I said, "I wasn't asking about that." Victor took a moment to glance at me and smoothly changed the subject. "You look like you didn't sleep well." I said, "Thanks to you." He replied with a smile, "It's an honor." I cursed in my heart, shameless. After arriving at the company, I sat at my desk to finish the breakfast Victor had prepared for me. After the morning meeting, Dylan knocked on my office door. "Joanne, I can't handle Victor." I was flipping through yesterday's data reports. "I remember you had a backup plan." "That's true, but..." I looked up at him. He said reluctantly, "If we settle for second best, the results will be much worse than expected, maybe not even half of what we aimed for." I put down the things in my hand. "So, are you asking for my help?" He lowered his head. "I found out that you used to be involved with Victor." I let out a cold snort. "I really underestimated you." He quickly said, "I'm sorry." I stood up. turned my back, and said coldly, "You're no longer suited to work by my side. Go to HR this afternoon to hand over your work." Dylan seemed panicked. "I'm sorry, please give me another chance. I don't want to repeat myself." He slunk out. But I hadn't expected Dylan to have already bypassed me and handed the proposal directly to my superior, Declan. That afternoon, after Dylan finished his handover and moved to another department, Declan summoned me. I walked out of the CEO's office with an additional mission for the month: win over Victor within a week. When my footsteps paused in the project department, everyone fell silent, leaving only the sound of keyboard strokes. The next day, I took my team to Victor's corporate headquarters at Kaibwa Tower. According to the itinerary I had researched, Victor should have been in a board meeting at that time. I didn't mention my name when asking his secretary to relay a message, so I waited in the reception room for 3 hours. 3 hours later, Victor finally arrived, fashionably late. "My apologies, Joanne. If I'd known it was you, I would have dropped the meeting to see you right away." Victor sat at the head of the table, a considerable distance away from me. "I'm here today on behalf of Bona to discuss the interview for our upcoming Remarkable Entrepreneurs segment. I'm not currently interested in media interviews," he said. "But if it were a private meeting with you, I'd be happy to oblige." In that case, there was no need for further maneuvering. I stood up, walked to his side, and extended my hand. "What a pity. Mr. Victor, you've been thriving overseas these past 2 years, building quite a reputation. Having just returned to China, I thought you'd be eager to let your fellow countrymen see your brilliance." Victor grasped my hand. "It's simply because I'm too busy. Right now, I wish I could split time into 2 halves. Who knows, there might be opportunities to collaborate with your company in the future. There's plenty of time ahead of us." His last sentence was worth pondering, but my focus was entirely on his claim of being busy. Looking at his formal, businesslike demeanor, perhaps still fueled by unwillingness, I teased him, "If you're so busy, you shouldn't waste your time on romantic distractions. After all, showing up at my doorstep at 6 in the morning, such free time could be better spent elsewhere." He bared his teeth in a smile, perhaps not expecting me to speak to him like this on such an occasion. Raising an eyebrow, he said, "That's more important than work. I hope you'll understand, I'm already 30. Years of missed chances have filled me with regret. This time, I must succeed." After being back in the country for so long, he finally revealed his true intentions in front of me. I smiled and let go of his hand. "I'll show you what overestimating yourself really means." Before I left the meeting room, he said, "That word has never existed in my dictionary." I quickened my pace and walked out. At night, I buried myself in work under the lamp. My phone received a message from Victor: "Heard you got criticized by the board. Not sure how you're feeling now?" I honestly replied with 2 words: "Not bad." He called directly, "Joanne, do you know why I turned you down during the day?" I rubbed my temples. "Just say what you want to say. You could have consulted me privately for my opinion. I could have made time to cooperate with you. There's no point in saying this now, Victor. If you were willing to cooperate, this process wouldn't have gone wrong. But I didn't call you tonight just because of this." Victor's voice echoed through the receiver in the silent room. I admit, sometimes, I can't understand him. He seems even more cunning than before. I said, "Go ahead. Joanne, I want to answer the question you asked me on the night we broke up 5 years ago." I instinctively searched my memory for the details of that night. What had I asked? I couldn't remember clearly. Victor said, "I do, Joanne, do you hear me?" "I do." "Do what?" Suddenly, a sentence flashed through my mind. "Then would you marry me?" "Marry me tomorrow." Perhaps my silence made Victor sense the crisis, or perhaps he was eager to push forward, as he repeated, "Joanne, I'm willing to marry you, I'm willing to marry you tomorrow." I reminded him, "Victor, we're discussing business." "Joanne, this isn't the time for business matters," he said. "I have to admit to you, 5 years ago, after you broke up with me, I was really unwilling to accept it, but my pride wouldn't allow me to look back. In the depths of such a late night, his voice sounded especially sincere. Joanne, I was so young back then, so proud. But you taught me a lesson. I was unwilling, but more than that unwillingness, I couldn't forget you. I love you. I listened silently to his confession. I know you won't look back until you've achieved your goals. His voice tinged with a touch of helplessness. The facts prove that even now, you have no intention of looking back. After saying this, his tone regained its confidence. That's why I proved my capabilities to my parents abroad, and that's why I took over the family business. That's why I gained control. Seeing him drift off, I couldn't help but interrupt. What exactly are you trying to say? What I'm saying is that no one will ever tell me no again. His voice carried years of pent-up frustration and repression. Joanne, I can marry whoever I want, and no one has the right to stop me. Do you understand? Well, congratulations to you then, I said. So, I want to marry you properly and make you my one and only wife. At noon the next day, Victor's call reached Declan. Declan came to my office right after hanging up, his words brimming with surprise. He said, as expected of Joanne. Victor has already agreed to the interview. I replied calmly, it's all because our company has significant influence. That's precisely what Victor values. You don't need to be modest with me. Declan said, Victor already told me everything on the phone. He said he admires your professionalism and was moved by your sincerity, which is what changed his mind. To be honest, I was completely bewildered. For the next week, Victor and I were practically inseparable. He spoke eloquently in front of the camera, exuding the ultimate charm of a wealthy, sophisticated man. I watched the camera, just like the other onlookers, and felt my heart stir for him. To say I wasn't moved would be a lie, but starting over with him again would be no easy feat. All these years, I've grown accustomed to handling every trivial matter in life alone. Asking me to abandon the present and face an uncertain future, I truly don't have that much confidence. Joanne. Victor walked towards me after changing his clothes. What are you thinking? I noticed you've been standing here in a daze for quite some time. I was thinking I should treat you to a meal, I said sincerely. That's very true, Victor replied. How about cooking a meal for me yourself? Victor was lucky, my cooking skills have improved significantly compared to 5 years ago. He commented on each dish and finally gave it a perfect rating. If 10 is the highest score, tonight's meal gets a 10+1. I said, 10 is the full score, where did that extra point come from? Victor interlaced his fingers and stared at me earnestly. With me, you'll always be 1 point above perfect. I stood up to clear the table, but he beat me to it, efficiently gathering everything into the kitchen before starting to wash the dishes and pots. From behind him, I asked, do you usually do these things at home too? Victor's slender fingers soaked in the water as he washed the dishes, his movements not exactly clumsy. I rarely eat at home. After returning to the country, Evan kept finding excuses to invite me to meals. You could say tonight's dinner was the most comforting one I've had since coming back. I didn't respond, silently sitting on the sofa and turning on the TV. Victor came out after finishing the dishes. He grabbed his suit jacket from the back of the chair. Well, I should get going now. I stood up to see him out. While waiting for the elevator, he asked, it must have been tough, being alone all these years, right? I said, it's all right, just SOSO. The stairwell had motion sensor lights, and the elevator was taking forever to arrive. The light went out. Normally, I'd stomp my feet, clap my hands, or even shout a little to get the light back on. But for some reason, this time I didn't do any of that. The elevator reached our floor with a ding, and the hallway lights blazed on. Just as I turned to glance at Victor, a dark figure lunged toward me. Victor cupped my face and kissed me hard. The elevator doors closed, and we kissed in the tight space. Or rather, I was forced to endure his frenzied kisses. After a long while, he released me. I wiped my lips, panting as I glared at him. Have you lost your mind? No one had pressed the elevator button, so it remained on the floor where we had entered. Impatient, I jabbed the button for the basement level, but regretted it the moment the elevator started moving. Why should I take him downstairs after he had just forced a kiss on me? Victor's face darkened as he said, "I lost my mind the day I returned to the country." I silently took a step back until my back touched the wall, eyes locked on the elevator's floor display. As Victor moved closer, I raised my arm to block him. In response, he pulled me into a tight embrace. "Joanne, please, don't be so stubborn. Give me a chance. Let go of me first." I couldn't break free. "You're acting like a hooligan. What do I need to do for you to agree?" he asked gloomily, his tone full of grievance. Victor was pushed away by me once again. It had been raining for several days in City Y, and my car had developed some issues, so I sent it in for repairs. For the past few days, I've had to take the subway. At 7 in the evening, I walked out of the office building, holding an umbrella and making my way slowly along the sidewalk. By the time I realized someone was following me, it was already too late. I didn't even get a chance to turn around before a black hood was pulled over my head. I tried to break free, but my hands were forcefully twisted behind my back. I'd been kidnapped. The car twisted and turned, and I had no idea how much time had passed or where we were. I tried my best to stay calm, mentally preparing myself for whatever was about to happen. When I was brought to an unfamiliar room, I was tied to a chair, and the black hood over my head was finally removed. I sized up the two burly men standing before me. Burly man number 1 looked at me and said, "Do you know why you've been kidnapped?" I shook my head. Burly man number 2 said, "We want 5 million. I said, "I don't have that much." Number 2 asked, "How much do you have?" I asked a question, "What will you do if I don't have 5 million? Number 2 replied, "We'll kill the hostage." I fell silent. I was thinking, even if Cheryl and Terry sold my house, it wouldn't be enough to gather this much money. Number 1 got angry when he saw I wasn't speaking. "Have you gone mute? Can't you show some respect for our work? Throughout the whole trip, you haven't let out a single scream." Feeling somewhat frustrated, I said, "Big brother, I'm just a defenseless woman being kidnapped by you all. I can't run away, and I can't fight back. What's the point of making futile efforts?" Number 2 said, She actually makes a good point." Number 1 smacked him on the head and said, "We're robbers. We don't do reasonable." I said, "I really don't have 5 million. Can you take less?" Number 1 asked, "How much less?" I replied, "How about over 4 million less?" Number 1 got angry again, 5 million, not a penny less. I tried to reason with them, people shouldn't be so stubborn. "I have no money, killing me won't do you any good." Number 1 said, "Go borrow it." I replied, "Is that even an option?" Number 1 said, "Of course you can." So, I called Evan. As soon as Evan saw my call, he knew the plan had been exposed. He snapped into the phone angrily, "Sister-in-law, can't you follow the script? At a time like this, you're supposed to call the male lead. Victor, what are you calling me for? My role is the ringleader of the kidnappers. You're really making me furious." I could only blame Evan for hiring such unprofessional people. When they threw a hood over my head and shoved me into the back seat, one of the kidnappers even cupped his hand protectively over my head to keep me from bumping it. Just now, when they tied me to the chair, the first knot was too tight, so they considerately loosened it and tied it again. Besides, their rhetoric is full of holes. I retorted impatiently, "If you're done playing around, let me go." Unexpectedly, Evan, even after being exposed, stubbornly insisted, "No, my act isn't over yet." Through gritted teeth, I asked, "What exactly are you trying to do?" Evan yelled over the phone, "You two idiots, can you act more convincingly? Gag her so she doesn't make any noise." After saying this, Evan added, "Don't hurt her." The burly man number 1 called Victor right in front of me and straight up asked, "Is Joanne your woman?" There was a pause on the other end before the reply came, "Yes, she is." Number 1 snickered and asked in a gruff voice, she's in my hands now. If you want to save her, prepare 5 million immediately. There was a moment of silence on the other end before the reply came, I need to confirm her safety. Number 1 said, I don't have time for you to confirm all that. Take it or leave it. If I don't see 5 million in cash within an hour, I'll kill her. It just goes to show how unprofessional they are, who can prepare 5 million in cash within an hour in the middle of the night. Victor fell silent once more. Number 1 was frustrated by his silence and shouted, save him or not. If you don't, I'll resell him right away. By then, you won't have a chance. Victor quickly replied, all right, send me the address, I'll be right there. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to Evan's plan. 40 minutes later, Victor appeared before me with a battered and bruised Evan in tow. Evan had taken quite a beating from Victor. As he walked in, he yelled at the 2 burly men, you idiots, what are you staring at? Got nothing better to look at? Hurry up and untie my boss's wife. Victor's face was as cold as ice. After confirming I was unharmed, he viciously grabbed Evan by the collar. Evan, remember this kind of thing only happens once. He left the rest unsaid. Evan grinned and said, there absolutely won't be a next time. If this happens again, I swear I'll be a dog. Victor released him. I gave Evan a sharp glare. Evan said, you two are a match made in heaven, both equally sharp. You, sister-in-law, called me directly, and Victor? He barged into my house demanding 5 million, ready to beat me up if I refused. At this, Evan touched his swollen cheek and said furiously to the 2 burly men, couldn't you have given me a few more hours? There's no way I could scrape together 5 million in just 1 hour, utterly ridiculous. Victor wrapped an arm around my shoulder and said softly, lowering his head, Joanne, let's go home. The car glided smoothly through the night. The rain had stopped, and the streetlights stretched our shadows long. Victor kept one hand on the steering wheel while the other rested gently on the back of mine, as if afraid I might pull away at any moment. I didn't pull away, nor did I speak. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a low voice, Joanne, I'm sorry. About what happened tonight. I truly had no idea beforehand. I glanced at him, my tone calm, I know. Those petty schemes of Evan, did you think he could actually hide them from you? He smiled bitterly, no. But I didn't expect him to take it this far. I looked away, fixing my gaze on the rain-soaked street ahead. He probably wanted to force us to finally talk it out. Victor fell silent for a moment, his voice low and hoarse, then, let's lay it all out, okay? The car stopped at a red light, and he turned to look at me intently. Joanne, in these 5 years, it's not like I haven't dated others or tried to forget you. But every time it came down to it, it was always you in my mind. The you who gritted your teeth in that Western restaurant and said, the gap between us is too big, the you who would rather move back to a rented apartment than stay in my house, the you who, knowing full well my flight was tomorrow, still rushed to the airport. His voice trembled slightly, but it was unshakably firm. I used to think that loving someone meant giving them the best material things and ensuring their comfort. But you taught me that true love is about making the other person stand tall and never feel insecure when they're by your side. The traffic light turned green, but he didn't start the car immediately. I didn't come back to China to chase the Joanne from 5 years ago. The person I want is the current you, the 30-year-old Joanne who's independent, sharp, and has light in her eyes. The one I want to marry is this version of you, who dares to be tough on herself and the world. He took a deep breath, as if exhaling all the restraint he'd accumulated over those 5 years. I don't ask for your immediate forgiveness, nor do I expect you to agree right away. All I'm asking for is a chance to pursue you. This time, I stand before you with no family background, no money, just me as a person. If you're willing to take me, then take me, if not, I won't pester you any further. I looked at him, my eyes stinging slightly, yet I smiled. Victor, you know what? 5 years ago, what I feared most was that one day you'd say these very words. He froze. Because back then, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself from throwing myself into your arms, telling myself it's okay, as long as he loves me. But I didn't want to live like that. I want to stand tall, to be truly loved, and to love back just as well. I paused, my voice soft yet clear. Now. I stand tall. I reached out and took his hand. So, your pursuit, I accept it. But the rules are mine to set, take it slow, date like ordinary people, argue, make up. No more looking down, no more pity, only equality between us. His eyes shone brilliantly, like fireworks suddenly lighting up the night. Okay, he said hoarsely, smiling like a child who'd just been given candy. Whatever you say. The car started again, and the air after the rain was so fresh it felt as if it had been washed. As I gazed out the window, it suddenly occurred to me that this city, where I'd lived for 10 years, no longer made me feel like an outsider. Cinderella has grown up and no longer needs glass slippers. She has become her own light. And the man beside her has finally learned to walk by her side. What the future holds, no one knows. But at least at this moment, I am willing to hold his hand and walk forward together. In the early summer of City Y, the air was filled with the fragrance of gardenias. The wedding was held at a private estate in the suburbs, without extravagant displays or the flashing cameras of the media. Only immediate family and closest friends from both sides, fewer than 50 people in total, were present. I wore a simple train wedding dress, its skirt as light as a cloud. Cheryl adjusted my veil, her eyes red and teary. Joanne, you know what? I never thought 5 years ago you'd come this far. She sniffled, I thought you'd stay stubborn for life. I smiled and squeezed her hand, I just didn't want to lose to myself. The dressing room door was tapped lightly as Evan poked half his head in, his face still bearing faint scars from being punched by Victor. He always called them badges of honor for love's sacrifice. Sis-in-law, it's time. Victor's outside pacing like an ant on a hot griddle, scared you'll run away. Walking down the red carpet, there was no father to hold my hand. Step by step, I crossed the lawn toward him alone. Victor stood at the end, dressed in a dark gray suit, the very one I had scrimped and saved to buy him years ago. 5 years had passed, yet the cut still fit him perfectly. Only now, he seemed more composed than before, his gaze so tender it could melt into liquid. He reaches out his hand to me. I place my hand in his palm, my fingertips slightly cold. The pastor asked, Joanne, do you take this man to be your husband? To love, honor, and cherish him, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, till death do you part. I looked into Victor's eyes and said word by word, I do. But I'll add one more thing, I do, to love him as an equal, to achieve together, to grow side by side. Victor froze for a second, then burst into laughter, though his eyes turned red. When it was his turn, his voice was low yet firm, I take this woman to be my wife, to be her husband, her partner, her support. I'll give her all that I am and respect every choice she makes. I swear, for the rest of my life, I will never let her bow her head again, never let her face any storm alone. As we exchanged rings, he knelt on one knee, held my hand, and gently slid the ring onto my finger. Joanne, thank you for waiting for me to grow up. I looked down at him, sunlight falling on the top of his head, and suddenly burst into tears. Victor, thank you for finally learning to stand by my side. From the guest seats came Evan's teasing whistle, Cheryl and Terry clapped while holding their child, and in the estate, applause and laughter blended into one. When the wedding ended, we didn't go on a honeymoon. We just held hands and drove back to my home in the city, that 150 square meter apartment I'd gritted my teeth to buy. The living room still held all the furniture I'd gradually acquired over the years, each piece bearing traces of my life. That evening, he cooked a simple meal of 2 dishes and a soup, and I leaned against the kitchen door, watching him work. Sweetheart, he called without turning around, taste this and see if it's salty enough. I walked over, wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, and pressed my face against his back. Darling, can we always be like this from now on? Just the two of us living like this, okay? He turned off the stove, turned around, and lifted me onto the counter, kissing me with his head lowered. Okay. Just like this, slowly spending a lifetime together. Outside the window, the city lights burned all night long. And at last I came to believe, the story of Cinderella isn't about waiting for a prince to rescue her, it's about finally meeting a man who's willing to walk barefoot with her through thorns. We no longer looked down at each other. We just tightly held each other's hands.